We are joined now by my favorite draft analyst. I'll tell that to field too. He's our guy, but I got to rock with Matt. Matt has the most amazing journey, I think, to get to where he's at. Had a site like ours at one point. Now is the man on ESPN. He's joining us to talk about next year's draft class. We'll get a couple in about this year's QB draft class, but the conversation we're kind of having here is what happens if the Saints decide to bypass on this quarterback class? Derek Carr never comes back, never plays again. Who are the guys that would be there in 2026 that the Saints could possibly be excited about, assuming they have a bad season, they're picking high in the order next year?
I disappoint you guys by saying that Arch Manning will probably not be in the 2026 NFL draft class.
They'll still be bad then too. That's okay.
That's a 2-year plan. You got to think long term, guys. Everyone I've talked to, and I'm not going to claim to be close with Arch Manning's uncles or dad, but everyone I've talked to says that they understand the process for him. He needs 2 years as a starter in college. There's a magic number, 25 starts in college before you go to the NFL. The amount of success you have changes exponentially. I think we'll see Arch in Austin for 2 years. But there is a familiar name that will be available at the top of the 2026 draft class for you guys, and that's Garrett Nusmire, who obviously has some connections to the state of Louisiana, has some connections to the coaching staff with the New Orleans Saints. So I think that is a name, as my dog prepares to bark here, I think that's a name that will be near the top of lists as we get ready for 2026. Nusmire will be up there. Drew Aller from Penn State, who decided to go back to college for another year, he's going to be up there. But it is a much more, I think, exciting quarterback class with guys like Lenora Sellers. Obviously, Nico going from Tennessee to UCLA. He's a name that you at least have to be watching. So I would say next year, and we feel like this every year, right? But next year looks like it will have more top-end talent, whereas this year has more spread-out depth.
Does the Nusmire thing qualify as like Brown and Brownie? Like, is it as cool as that, or like? But honestly, what do you think of him? Like, how does he? Like, I was hearing a little bit of hype. It sounded like this year, and then it kind of tailed off. How excited should people be about him relative to the guys in this year's class? And I guess all these guys relative to the guys in this year's class.
Yeah, Nick, I do think that, again, the top end talent is a little more exciting. And I would say Nusmire is going to be somebody that's floated out early as a potential number 1 overall pick. He's a little bit undersized, 6 foot, 200 pounds, but he has a big arm and he moves around really well. And we're kind of in this era of the small quarterback anyway. A lot of guys are 6'1", 6'2". So it's not a huge obstacle that he's not built like Drake May or Justin Herbert because he moves so well. And you're right. He had a lot of hype about midseason, and then he had some tough games. And I would say the same thing happened to Drew Aller. Well, like, he had some big games and then he kind of fizzled out and didn't have the marquee moments that we were looking for. And I think Nusmire is going to be in that. He was in that same area this year where there was that hype. Maybe he could come out and jump into a weak 2025 quarterback class. I think he made the right decision going back to LSU, getting another year of starts under his belt, showing off some of that talent that he has, some of the arm talent, but also just his experience level has to come up. And the game's going to slow down for him once he starts to get into, 20, 25 starts. We're going to see him become a different player, is the hope, at least, that he is somebody that's ascending instead of descending, which happened to some of these quarterbacks like Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck, who we thought were going to be big names this year.
Matt, we can bookmark this and play it again in September. But I think everyone knew Nusmire. Everyone probably knew Drew Aller, and everyone obviously knows Arch Manning. But who are the guys to watch and hope for the Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels like ascension to be like, all right, now this class is cooking? I mean, is Sellers one of those guys that could become really special, or is there anyone that could become special?
Yeah, Sellers could. I mean, he's got the build, right? He's huge and he's got a big arm. I think he's got to make better decisions, but it's also going to be tough because that South Carolina team lost a lot. Now they bring back some guys. Nick Harbert, wide receiver, is a freak show. He's built like DK Metcalf. They're going to have Dylan Stewart at defensive end, but they turn over a lot. So he's definitely someone to watch. Man, I think Cade Klubnik ended the year as well as any quarterback in the country did at Clemson. Another guy who, not the biggest guy, but just played super well down the stretch. So he would be in that mix of, when I think about somebody that's trajectory is on the right plane right now and is going in the right direction, he's someone to watch. A sleeper that I will throw out there is John Mateer, going from Washington State to Oklahoma. He has tools. He is a gunslinger. He's a fiery dude. It's like there's some Gardner Minshew with just the way that he plays, but like a plus version of that. So he's going to be a ton of fun. So if you want a name that's kind of out there a little bit, I would say John Mateer's got a shot to do some really big things next season.
Yeah, hey man. So when you think about, April 21st, 2024, right? A year from now, I mean,
26.
a year from, 2024, a year ago, what were you saying about this current class, and kind of compare that to what you think about this 2026 class? And, if you're one of the strategic guys for the Saints and making a decision, do you look at the draft and do you think about like skipping one, or is one class just so much better than the other? Can you just talk about the difference between the two and how you feel about them?
Called me out here. I like it. So last year at this time, we were saying that this year's quarterback class was full of potential, but guys who had to take the step. Carson Beck needed to take the step. Quinn Ewers needed to take the step. We all knew who Shedeur Sanders was. He was obviously a hot name. Once Cam Ward decided to go to Miami instead of entering last year's draft, he was viewed as a player that would be very much in the mix. Not at number one overall. The jump that he took was huge. But I do think, to your point, teams have to be scouting ahead. And this is something I learned early in my career is teams are, at quarterback especially, they are looking ahead to saying, hey, if we don't love Shedeur Sanders, if we don't love Jackson Dart, how do we like next year's class? And you try to be a year early on your evaluation. One of the things that really helped me in my career was in 2017, I had an article that said if Josh Allen comes out this year, he will be a top 3 quarterback drafted. And he was a sophomore at Wyoming. No one was talking about Josh Allen at that time, but NFL teams were, which is where I got that information from. Now, obviously, Josh went back to Wyoming for another year and ended up being the number 7 overall pick in the draft. And he's an all-pro. He's a great player, but teams are usually a year ahead. Now, the important part to remember is it is a process. Carson Beck is a prime example of that. 1 year ago, I think if you look at way too early mock drafts for 2025, Carson Beck was the number 1 overall pick for a lot of people because you expected him to, to continue where he was at, to maybe even get better. And instead, he got worse. He started turning the ball over. Then he got hurt. So sometimes guys do regress. And so I think it's a little bit risky at times, especially when we're not talking about, Caleb Williams type prospects where years in advance, this guy's going to be a dude. We can all anticipate the come out of nowhere transfer guys, but I would say next year doesn't have a Caleb Williams. It doesn't have a player that we were saying 2 years early, hey, this is going to be a guy, or even, Drake May was that way. Justin Herbert was definitely that way. Even Bryce Young and CJ Stroud were kind of that way. So next year doesn't have that guy right now that is, hey, here's the number 1 overall pick for next year's draft. We're going to get this out there really early. There's not that. I hate this term, but there's not the generational quarterback prospect next year.
For no reason at all, just totally random name here, just picking it out of nowhere. Give me your Tyler Shuck scouting report.
Totally random, no reason. I like Tyler Shuck. I'm worried about the injuries, and I always worry about age. And I said this last year about Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. I always worry when a guy figures it out at like 24. Are you figuring it out because you're 6 years older than that corner you're playing against? Or are you figuring it out because you've just had that time and the experience? I've talked to college coaches who swear by experience is the most important trait for a college quarterback because the game just starts to slow down for you so much. So I like Tyler Shuck. Watching him throw at the Senior Bowl, I was really blown away by how well he spun it, how athletic he was. If you told me a year ago we'd be talking about Tyler Shuck as a top 40 draft pick, I would have laughed in your face. I would have told you were crazy. But the Brahms are pretty damn good at coaching quarterbacks, and I want to give him a lot of credit to, staying healthy while not sacrificing his style of play. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, to continue to just go out there and play his type of ball, even with 2 broken collarbones in your past and what do you have, another arm injury? But he still plays the exact same way. I remember watching his spring game at Oregon right after Justin Herbert got drafted. So, I mean, I've been watching this dude for 7 years, and I love the fact that he's still the same kind of gunslinger that he's always been.
Last question from us. Obviously, here, the depth of knowledge that you have here, this is just for my own knowledge. I'm just curious, like you can rattle off every QB in this class. This draft ends. How quickly could you put out like a top 100? Like where are you at already on next year's class? It sounds like you're already like deep in that bag.
I know this because I sent it to some teams this week to like start to get ahead. I'm at 230 players for next year, with notes on them, because I keep notes on them during the college football season, because otherwise it's impossible to like actually go back, and it would take years to do it, right? So you try to keep good notes during the college football season. Like, if I'm watching South Carolina, if I'm watching Kyle Kennard, well, let me go ahead and get notes on, other guys on that defense. So you try to cheat a little bit and stay ahead. But it's fun, man. I get so excited by Sunday morning. I'll be flying home from Green Bay, and even if I don't publish one, I'll do a mock draft for fun just to kind of see where team needs are at and see where player values are. I can't get enough of it. It's kind of a sickness at this point.
Unbelievable insight. Thank you for your time, man. Make sure you guys are checking Matt out on ESPN. We don't got to tell you that because everybody's watching him anyhow. Thanks for the time, man.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Hank.